The night I found the folder, she was asleep on the couch with the lamp still on, one arm draped over her eyes like she was blocking out a thought instead of light. The TV had timed out to a black screen, the room quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the charger we always lost. The drawer stuck, as usual, and when I tugged harder, a thin folder slid out and hit the floor. It wasn't dramatic. No lock. No red flags jumping out. Just paper. Receipts. Printouts. The kind of stuff people keep when they're being careful. I stood there longer than I should have, listening to her breathing from across the room, trying to decide whether to put it back untouched. That felt dishonest. Opening it felt worse. The first page was a checklist. Not a to-do list, more like categories. Housing. Transportation. Emergency. It was neatly written, calm handwriting. Hers. The same handwriting she used on birthday cards and grocery lists. I told myself it was nothing. People plan. People organize. She was like that. Always thinking 2 steps ahead, sometimes 10. That's what I liked about her. It made life feel steadier. Still, my chest felt tight in a way that didn't match the situation. Like my body knew something my brain was still arguing with. I closed the folder carefully and slid it back where it came from. The drawer resisted again, as if it wanted to say something. I sat on the edge of the coffee table and watched her sleep, noticing how relaxed she looked, how safe. That was the part that didn't fit. If everything was fine, why did this feel like standing in a room after someone had quietly moved all the furniture? We'd been together long enough that our routines had merged without discussion. Coffee cups left in predictable places. Shoes lined up by the door in an unspoken order. We didn't say mine or yours much anymore. It was just ours, and that word did a lot of heavy lifting. She moved in after her lease ended, not because of a big talk or milestone, but because it made sense. One box at a time. A plant here, a bookshelf there. She never officially changed her address, which I remember thinking was practical. No rush. We weren't in a hurry to prove anything. She talked about the future in pieces. A trip we might take. A dog she wanted someday. A kitchen with better light. She never used the word forever. But she didn't avoid it either. There was comfort in that middle ground. That's why the folder bothered me more than it should have. It didn't match the rhythm we had. It felt parallel. Like a second beat I hadn't been hearing. The next morning, she was cheerful in a quiet way. Humming while making toast. Asking if I wanted eggs. I watched her hands, the way she cracked the shell cleanly, no mess. She noticed me staring and raised an eyebrow, smiling. What? She asked. Nothing, I said. And I meant it, in the sense that I didn't yet have words for the something growing behind my ribs. Later, while she was in the shower, I opened the drawer again. This time I told myself I was just checking. Just trying to understand. The folder was still there, but now I knew it existed. It felt heavier. Inside were bank statements from an account I didn't recognize. Not huge amounts. Consistent ones. A few housing listings printed and highlighted. A note about storage units. Dates in the margins. It wasn't a plan to leave tomorrow. It was worse. It was a plan to be ready, and I couldn't tell if that made her careful. Or already gone. I didn't confront her. Not because I was afraid of the answer, at least not consciously. I told myself I needed context. That there was probably an explanation that would make me feel foolish for ever worrying. I've always believed clarity comes from patience, not pressure, so I watched more closely. She started paying for more things herself. Not in an obvious way. Just small shifts. Groceries she used to add to the shared list, she bought on her own. She insisted on covering her phone bill again, said she wanted the points on her card. When I suggested we finally merge savings, she laughed it off, kissed my cheek, and said, "One step at a time." I replayed that moment later, wondering how many steps she was taking without me. At night, she'd scroll through her phone with the brightness turned low. When I asked what she was looking at, she'd shrug. Nothing interesting. Her tone wasn't defensive. That almost made it worse. It sounded practiced, like something she'd already decided was true. One evening, she mentioned a coworker who'd just moved into her own place after a breakup. She framed it as admiration. "It's kind of impressive," she said. "To just handle everything yourself." I nodded, but my stomach tightened. I thought about the highlighted listings in the folder. The way they were all small, efficient spaces. Studios. One-bedrooms. No room for a second toothbrush. I tried to test the ground gently. Asked her how she'd feel about signing a longer lease together. She didn't say no. She said, "Let's see how things feel closer to the date." That answer lingered longer than it should have. I started wondering if I'd missed a conversation we were supposed to have. Or if we were having it already, just in different languages. The hardest part was how normal everything else felt. We still laughed. Still cooked together. Still slept with our legs tangled. It's unsettling to feel close to someone and suspect you're being kept at a safe distance at the same time. The first time I almost said something, it was over paperwork. We were sorting mail at the table, a quiet Sunday afternoon, rain tapping lightly against the windows. She slid an envelope into her bag too quickly, then paused, like she realized the motion had been visible. "It's just some account stuff," she said, unprompted. I nodded. "Okay." She watched my face, searching for something. I kept it neutral, but inside, my thoughts were anything but. Account stuff had become a category I hated. It felt like a closed door in a hallway I thought we shared. That night, I dreamed we were packing for a trip, and every time I handed her something, she put it in a different suitcase than mine. A few days later, I noticed she'd stopped talking about timelines altogether. Not just big ones. Even small future plans were phrased carefully. "We could instead of we will. If we're around instead of when." I told myself people go through phases. That not everything is a signal. But signals pile up, and at some point they start to feel like a message. Then came the false relief. She brought home a bottle of wine midweek, which she only did when she wanted to talk. She poured 2 glasses, sat across from me, and took a breath like she was bracing herself. "I've been thinking about us," she said. My heart kicked up, ready for impact. She talked about feeling more grounded lately. About appreciating what we'd built. About wanting to be intentional. She said she liked how stable things felt. I listened carefully, waiting for the but. It never came. Instead, she reached for my hand and said, "I'm really happy right now." That night, I let myself believe I'd misunderstood everything. That the folder was just anxiety, not intention. That planning for independence didn't mean planning to leave. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. In the morning, the folder was still in the drawer. After that conversation, I tried to reset myself. I made a conscious effort to stop tracking her movements like data points. I stopped opening the drawer. I told myself trust wasn't something you rationed out in response to unease. It was something you committed to, even when it made you uncomfortable. For a while, it worked. We fell back into rhythm. Shared dinners. Shared jokes. She left notes on the counter when she left early. Little things that felt reassuring in their ordinariness. Then a notification popped up on her laptop while she was in the shower. I wasn't trying to read it. It was just there, lighting up the screen in the dim room. A calendar reminder. Storage unit, confirm availability. I stared at it longer than I should have. Storage for what? We hadn't talked about downsizing. We hadn't talked about decluttering. We hadn't talked about anything that required storing parts of our life somewhere else. When she came back, towel around her hair, I asked casually, "What's the storage unit for?" She didn't freeze. That was the strange part. She shrugged while opening a drawer. "Just thinking ahead. You know, in case we ever need extra space." "We?" I asked, lightly. She smiled. "Yeah. We." Her answer should have settled it. Instead, it felt like a word chosen carefully, placed gently over something unstable. Later that week, she mentioned renewing her gym membership closer to her office. It was more expensive. Less convenient for me. She framed it as efficiency. Every explanation made sense on its own. Together, They formed a picture I didn't want to see. I started to wonder if happiness and preparation could exist at the same time. If loving someone meant always keeping a version of yourself ready to walk alone, the scariest thought wasn't that she might leave, it was that she might never intend to, as long as leaving stayed easy. The false narrative I built for myself was that she was just practical. That her past had taught her not to rely too heavily on anyone, even someone she loved. I respected that version of her. It allowed me to stay calm. Then I overheard a phone call. I wasn't eavesdropping. She was on the balcony, door half open, thinking she had privacy. I was rinsing dishes. Her voice carried in fragments, softened by the hum of traffic below. No, not yet, she said. I'm not rushing anything. A pause. Then, quieter. I just want options. That word hit differently when it wasn't written on paper. I turned the faucet off, stood still, and listened to the rhythm of her voice. She sounded thoughtful. Not upset. Like someone explaining a strategy, not a fear. Later, she came back inside, kissed my cheek, and asked what I wanted for dinner. The normalcy felt almost surgical. That night, I finally opened the folder again. This time I read everything. The savings account wasn't new. It had been open almost as long as we'd been together. Small deposits at first, then larger ones as time went on. There was a rough budget broken down by month. Rent. Utilities. Food. Everything accounted for. There was even a list titled non-negotiables. Close to work. Quiet building. Month-to-month lease. Nothing about me. The realization didn't come with anger. It came with a strange calm, like the moment you accept that a storm isn't passing, you're just standing in it. I sat there, folder in my lap, and understood the truth I'd been avoiding. She wasn't planning to leave because things were bad, she was planning so she'd never be trapped if they became inconvenient, and I couldn't tell if that made her smart, or meant I was optional. I didn't bring it up right away. Once I saw the shape of it, I wanted to understand where I fit inside that logic. Or if I fit at all. I started paying attention to the language she used when talking about the future. Not just with me, but with other people. When friends asked about us, she said things like, "We're good where we are," or, "We're taking things as they come." It sounded reasonable. Mature, even. But there was no direction in it. No shared destination. One night, over dinner with friends, someone joked about couples who still kept separate finances after years together. The table laughed. She laughed too, but there was a tightness in her jaw that I hadn't noticed before. She reached for her glass a second earlier than usual. On the walk home, I asked her, gently, what commitment meant to her. I framed it as curiosity, not accusation. She thought for a moment. It means choosing each other every day, she said. Not because you have to. Because you want to. I nodded. It sounded right. But it avoided the part one couldn't stop thinking about. Choice implies the ability to walk away at any moment. I realized then that we were operating under different definitions. For me, commitment meant building something that was harder to leave than to stay. For her, it meant staying only as long as leaving remained painless. The tension finally surfaced a week later when I mentioned, casually, updating beneficiaries on our accounts. A small, practical step. The kind couples take without drama. She went quiet. Not angry. Just distant. Let's not rush that, she said. That was the moment the false comfort collapsed, because people who see you as part of their future don't treat permanence like a risk, they treat it like a foundation, and suddenly, everything she'd been doing made sense in a way that hurt more than any fight would have. I asked her about the folder the next night. Not abruptly. I waited until we were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the space between us filled with the kind of silence that usually meant comfort. I found something in the drawer, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She didn't ask what. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again like someone bracing against bright light. I wondered when that would come up, she said. That answer alone confirmed more than any explanation could. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize either. She told me she'd learned the hard way that stability could disappear without warning. That relying too fully on another person felt reckless to her. That loving me didn't cancel out her need to feel prepared. I'm not planning to leave you, she said. I'm planning to never be stuck. I asked her why she hadn't told me. She said she didn't think it mattered. That it was her safety net, not a commentary on us. That was the moment everything tilted, because safety nets change the way you walk the wire. They make risk tolerable. Loss survivable. I told her it felt like she'd been quietly rehearsing a solo life while assuring me we were building one together. She frowned, genuinely confused. I'm still here, she said. Isn't that what counts? I didn't have an answer that landed cleanly. Being present isn't the same as being invested. Staying isn't the same as committing to staying. She asked if I wanted her to close the account. To throw away the plans. Her voice wavered slightly, like she already knew my response. I didn't want that. I wanted transparency. I wanted to know if I was a choice she kept open. Or a future she was willing to anchor to. We sat there a long time, neither of us moving closer. The hardest part wasn't the planning, it was realizing she'd built an exit so carefully that she never had to ask herself whether she wanted to stay for good.